Welcome to Story Never End. Today's book is one of the most unsettling novels ever written, George Orwell's 1984, published in 1949, still terrifyingly relevant in 2026.
And I'd argue it's more relevant now than it was when Orwell wrote it, which is a genuinely disturbing thing to say.
So before we dive in, I want to start with something you've probably done. You have a main account somewhere, Instagram, X, whatever, where you post a curated version of yourself. And then you have a Finsta, an alt account, where you say what you actually think.
Oh, for sure. The Finsta is where the real you lives.
Right. And the whole premise of 1984 is, what if even your Finsta wasn't safe? What if even your private thoughts, the things you never say out loud, were being monitored?
That's the world Orwell built, and it's not as far from our world as we'd like to think.
Let's get into it. Okay, the setup. The story takes place in Airstrip 1, formerly known as England, which is part of a superstate called Oceania. The year is supposedly 1984.
Oceania is ruled by a totalitarian party called INGSOC, English Socialism, led by a figure called Big Brother, whose face is on every poster, every screen.
The party's slogan, printed everywhere, is one of the most famous sentences in all of literature.
Hit it.
Original quote, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength."
And the genius of it is that these aren't just lies. They're impossible contradictions stated as truths. Orwell is showing you that when a regime controls language completely, it can make contradictions feel logical.
The party has 4 ministries. The Ministry of Truth, which produces lies.
Every name is the exact opposite of its function, and that's not an accident. It's a systematic inversion of meaning. If you control what words mean, you control what people can think.
This is where Orwell introduces Newspeak, the official language being developed to replace English. The goal of Newspeak is to make thought crime literally impossible.
Because if you don't have a word for freedom in the political sense, if the word only means the dog is free, not on its leash, then you literally cannot form the concept of political freedom.
Language shapes the boundaries of thought.
And this is so relevant right now. I think about the algorithm, TikTok, Instagram, whatever feeds we're living inside. They function like a soft version of Newspeak. They don't remove words, but they collapse the space for complex thinking by making everything fast, reactive, emotional.
You can't have a nuanced political argument in a 15-second video.
But all political problems require nuance, so the medium itself is doing the work of Newspeak without anyone having to ban anything.
Orwell would have seen that coming. He just didn't predict it would be voluntary and profitable. Our protagonist is Winston Smith, 39 years old, works at the Ministry of Truth. His job is to falsify the historical record.
When the party changes its policies or its alliances, Winston's job is to go back through old newspapers and alter them so they match the current party line.
If the party said last year that East Asia was an ally, but now East Asia is the enemy, Winston rewrites the old articles. He sends the originals down the memory hole, an actual incinerator chute, and the falsified versions replace them.
And this is particularly chilling because Winston is good at his job. He's efficient at destroying truth.
But he knows what he's doing, and that knowing, that secret awareness, is his danger.
The concept Orwell introduces here is thought crime.
Quote, "Thought crime does not entail death. Thought crime is death."
Thought crime is death. Not that you'll be executed, though you will, but that the moment you have an independent thought, you're already a dead person walking. You're living in constant, consuming terror of discovery.
And Winston is living that. He performs loyalty perfectly every day, faces the two-way screen called the telescreen, and inside, he's secretly alive with doubt and anger.
Then he buys a diary.
This is such a loaded act. He buys a beautiful, old-fashioned blank book, and he starts writing. And what does he write?
Down with Big Brother. Over and over.
Down with Big Brother. He writes it knowing it's a death sentence. He writes it anyway.
Because he needs somewhere that he's real. He needs that burner account for his soul.
And the question Orwell is asking is, how long can you maintain that internal space when the external world insists on a reality that contradicts everything you see? How long before the inside gets colonized too?
That's the central dread of the whole novel.
Enter Julia. Winston meets her at work. She's a young woman who works on the fiction writing machines. And at first, he thinks she's a spy. She seems like the perfect party loyalist.
And then she slips him a note. It says, "I love you."
Which, in this context, is one of the most dangerous things you can say to anyone.
Julia is a fascinating character because she's not ideologically opposed to the party. She doesn't care about theory or history or what Big Brother represents. She just wants to live, eat good food, have sex with who she wants, enjoy life.
Her rebellion is physical and personal, not intellectual.
And she's actually more practical about survival than Winston. She tells him, the key is to look completely loyal on the surface. She's in the anti-sex league, she volunteers for party activities, she cheers louder than anyone at rallies.
But behind that mask, she lives completely differently.
She says something that cuts to the heart of the whole book. Quote, "I don't mean confessing. Confessing is not betrayal. What you say or do doesn't matter. Only feelings matter. If they could make me stop loving you, that would be the real betrayal."
So she's saying, the party can have my performance. The party can have my words. But if they can't get inside my feelings, they haven't actually won.
And that's exactly what the party is trying to do. It doesn't want obedience. It wants love.
Which is so much more demanding and so much more horrifying.
The relationship between Winston and Julia is itself a political act. Having a private, emotional life that belongs entirely to them, that's the rebellion.
They find a room above an antique shop. The shopkeeper, Charrington, rents it to them. There's no telescreen in that room.
That room without a telescreen is their entire freedom. They talk, they eat real food, they just exist as human beings. And in Oceania, all of that is treason.
And you know, reading as an audience, you have this terrible sense that they're being watched the whole time.
Because they are.
Which brings us to O'Brien. Winston has long had the sense that O'Brien, a high-ranking inter-party member, is secretly on his side. They've had moments of eye contact that Winston reads as a signal of shared dissent.
And O'Brien does reach out. He invites Winston and Julia to his apartment and reveals that there's a secret resistance organization called the Brotherhood, led by Goldstein, the regime's official enemy figure.
Winston and Julia agree to join. They take an oath. They say they'll commit murder, sabotage, spread venereal disease, throw acid in children's faces, whatever the Brotherhood needs.
That oath is dark and important. Orwell is showing that Winston, in his desperation for resistance, will accept a brutality that mirrors the party's own methods. He's not a clean hero.
Then they get arrested.
Because O'Brien is a party agent. He's been watching Winston for years. And the room above the antique shop, there was a telescreen hidden behind a picture on the wall.
Their freedom space was surveilled the whole time.
That's the moment where the novel becomes genuinely suffocating. The one place you thought was safe was never safe.
This maps so clearly onto something we live with now. We use private channels, DMs, encrypted apps, and we have this sense of security. But quote-unquote private is a spectrum, not a guarantee.
And the deeper point is that Winston trusted O'Brien based on vibes, based on eye contact, based on a feeling of kinship. And that feeling was completely manufactured.
O'Brien was aura farming Winston's trust for years, playing the role of secret ally perfectly.
It's a reminder that the most dangerous manipulation doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like recognition.
Part 3 is the interrogation at the Ministry of Love, and this is where the book becomes genuinely philosophical and genuinely brutal.
O'Brien oversees Winston's treatment. He explains that the process has 3 stages: learning, understanding, and acceptance.
And O'Brien is such a disturbing character because he's clearly intelligent, clearly understands the system he serves, and genuinely believes in it.
He's not a bureaucrat following orders. He's a true believer.
He makes the most chilling statement about power I've ever read. Quote, "Power is not a means, it is an end. One does not establish a dictatorship in order to safeguard a revolution. One makes the revolution in order to establish the dictatorship."
That sentence exposes the logic of every authoritarian movement in history. They always arrive with a liberating narrative, and then they establish the apparatus of control, and the liberation disappears.
He goes further. He says, if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
Forever. Not temporarily, not until things improve. Forever. Because the point isn't to achieve something. The point is the boot.
And I think this is what distinguishes Orwell's totalitarianism from other dystopias. It doesn't have a utopian goal it's pursuing. It's not trying to build a perfect society. It's trying to maintain power indefinitely. The suffering is the point.
That's what makes it so hopeless and so true. The regime in 1984 cannot be reformed because reform isn't its failure state, it's its design.
If you try to clock it, to see through the regime, to call out the contradictions, O'Brien has an answer. He says reality itself is defined by the party.
Quote, whatever the party holds to be truth is truth. It is impossible to see reality except by looking through the eyes of the party.
That's the ultimate totalitarian claim. Not just control over behavior, but control over epistemology, over what counts as real.
And the modern version of this isn't someone telling you what reality is. It's the algorithm showing you a curated slice of reality so consistently that you mistake the slice for the whole.
Let's talk about doublethink, because this is one of Orwell's most lasting conceptual contributions.
Doublethink is defined in the novel as, quote, the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them.
And the key word is accepting. Not knowing they contradict each other, actually believing both at once.
The party member knows that the historical records are being altered because he does it himself, and he also believes the party's claims about history, and he holds these simultaneously without discomfort.
What's wild is that this isn't actually as psychologically unusual as it sounds. We do versions of this constantly.
We believe privacy is important, and we feed all our data to apps without a second thought.
We know algorithms are manipulating us, and we continue to trust our emotional responses to algorithmically served content.
We believe in democracy, and we vote based on social media feeds that are designed to maximize engagement, not to inform.
The knowing doesn't change the doing. That's doublethink.
And Orwell's insight is that doublethink isn't a failure of intelligence. It's a feature. It's what allows a society to function while systematically lying to itself.
2016 nostalgia is a whole thing online right now. People are nostalgic for the pre-algorithm internet, before recommendation engines took over everything. And I think what they're nostalgic for is actually a time before doublethink was structurally required of them.
Before you had to simultaneously know that your feed was curated and believe that it represented reality.
Back when you could just choose what to read and form a thought about it.
That's delulu of us to want back, maybe, but it's real.
Let's talk about a part of the book that often gets overlooked, Winston's memories of his mother.
This is such a quietly devastating passage.
Winston remembers being a child during a time of scarcity. He stole his sick, starving sister's chocolate, just grabbed it and ran. And when he looked back, his mother was holding his sister. And the look on her face?
He doesn't describe it directly. He says the gesture communicated everything.
Years later, he understands what it meant. A kind of love that is completely futile, completely private, belonging to no ideology, no cause, just, I love you, even now, even as everything fails.
And the party specifically targets that kind of love for elimination. Because private love, love that doesn't pass through the party, is a zone of loyalty that competes with loyalty to Big Brother.
That's why children are encouraged to report their parents. That's why the Anti-Sex League exists, not because sexuality is wrong, but because it creates private bonds.
The party wants to be the only object of love. Every other attachment is a threat.
And this isn't Orwell's invention. He was writing about what he observed in Stalinist Russia, in Nazi Germany. The destruction of private emotional life is a real feature of historical totalitarianism.
Which is what makes the novel so important as history, not just as fiction. It's a taxonomy of how authoritarianism actually works.
Let's talk about the 2 minutes hate, because this is one of the most prescient things in the whole book.
Every day, all party members stop what they're doing and gather in front of a telescreen. A video plays of Goldstein, the party's official enemy, and everyone is expected to express furious hatred toward him.
Shouting, throwing things at the screen, contorting with rage. 2 minutes of organized collective fury.
And what Orwell understood is that this serves two functions simultaneously. One, it gives people a sanctioned outlet for negative emotions, so those emotions don't build up into actual resistance. Two, it creates group cohesion through shared hatred.
We hate together, therefore we are we.
I don't need to spell out how this maps to the internet, do I?
Every pylon, every main character moment, every time someone goes viral for being the villain of the week.
That's the 2 minutes hate. Except it's not 2 minutes, it's 2 days, 2 weeks, and the platform profits from every second of it.
Because rage keeps you on the platform longer. The algorithm knows that outrage is more engaging than nuance.
So the platform has a structural incentive to surface content that generates the 2 minutes hate response. It doesn't need Big Brother to organize it. The engagement mechanics do it automatically.
And the target changes constantly, which keeps it fresh. New villain every few days.
And you know what's most insidious? It feels righteous. It feels like accountability. It feels like justice.
Whereas a lot of the time, it's really just the same mechanism Orwell described. Controlled rage, managed cohesion.
This you, the internet's way of calling someone out with receipts, can be real accountability, but it can also just be the ritual.
Okay, let's get to room 101, the final stage of Winston's interrogation.
O'Brien explains that room 101 contains the worst thing in the world, and the worst thing in the world is different for every prisoner.
For Winston, it's rats. He has a phobia of them that goes back to childhood, a visceral, animal terror.
O'Brien brings out a cage of rats that can be strapped to Winston's face, and Winston, who has held out through months of torture, who has maintained his internal conviction that Big Brother is a lie, breaks.
Quote, "Do it to Julia. Do it to Julia. Not me. Julia. I don't care what you do to her. Tear her face off, strip her to the bones. Not me. Julia. Not me."
And that's it. That's the betrayal. The one thing he promised himself he would never do. Sell out Julia. He does it in an instant under sufficient terror.
Now, Orwell is not making a moral argument about Winston's character. He's making an argument about human nature. The point is, at sufficient extremity, the self dissolves. The thing you would die rather than do, you do.
And the party has engineered this precisely. They don't need Winston to be broken by random torture. They need to find the specific lever that collapses him. Room 101 is a custom horror for each prisoner.
Which means the party has studied each prisoner deeply enough to know their deepest fear. That's the real surveillance payload.
It's not just watching where you go or what you say. It's knowing what you cannot bear.
After room 101, Winston and Julia meet again. They both know they've betrayed each other, and something is simply gone.
They can look at each other. They can even feel something. But the private, emotional world they built together has been destroyed. The party got inside it and shut it down.
And the last line of the novel is one of the most devastating sentences in literature.
After everything, the torture, the betrayal, the re-education, Winston sits in the Chestnut Tree Cafe. He's drinking gin. He's watching the telescreen. And then,
Quote, "He loved Big Brother."
full stop. End of book.
Most people read that and feel pure despair. Not that he was killed, that he was successfully remade. He genuinely loves the thing that destroyed him.
And that first reading is correct. It's Orwell's portrait of doublethink taken to its absolute conclusion. Think about how Winston lived throughout the whole novel, performing loyalty on the outside, holding his secret knowledge on the inside, permanently split, permanently exhausted, permanently terrified. That split was his burden as much as his resistance.
And what O'Brien does in the Ministry of Love is eliminate the split itself. Not the resistant half, the capacity to perceive the contradiction at all. Winston doesn't have two minds anymore. He has one, and it says, he loved Big Brother. The most complete conquest isn't making you lie. It's making the lie feel like truth.
So that's the first layer, but there's a second reading, and it changes everything.
Winston is going to be shot. He knows that. The party's process ends with execution, after the prisoner has been cured. So he dies with, he loved Big Brother in his head. The bullet comes, And it destroys that thought along with him.
The enemy's bullet destroys the thought the enemy planted.
Exactly. That manufactured love only existed inside Winston's skull. When the ministry of love kills him, it kills its own creation at the same time. But notice what the bullet can't reach.
The diary.
The diary. Those pages where he wrote "down with Big Brother" over and over in his own hand. That's not a thought. That's an act. It already left his body. It became ink, paper, something outside of him. The bullet has no jurisdiction there.
So the last thing Winston actually chose, the last expression of his genuine will, isn't "he loved Big Brother." It's those words he wrote on the first page of the diary.
And here's what makes this reading so sharp. Winston chose to die holding the party's thought in his head, knowing the bullet was coming, knowing it would destroy that thought along with him. The party spent enormous resources planting that love.
He used the enemy's bullet to destroy the enemy's creation.
That's doublethink turned against itself. And it's only possible because of what he did, not what he thought. The diary is the permanent record. He loved Big Brother is ephemeral, trapped inside a skull that was always going to be destroyed.
So that last sentence, "he loved Big Brother," is simultaneously the party's greatest victory and the proof of why it doesn't matter. The real Winston, the one who acted, who wrote, who put his truth into the world, that Winston already escaped the bullet's reach.
Orwell's final 5 words are the most precisely engineered irony in the book. They look like total defeat. They are also the proof that what you do outlasts what you think. So what do we do with this book in 2026?
I want to be careful here because there's a version of engaging with 1984 that's actually kind of useless. The version where you finish it and go, wow, authoritarian governments are bad. Glad I don't live there.
Right, because the book isn't just about authoritarian governments.
It's about the mechanisms, the underlying logic of how power maintains itself, how language shapes thought, how collective ritual manages dissent, how surveillance internalizes a self-censorship.
And those mechanisms don't require a totalitarian state. They operate inside democracies, inside platform economies, inside social groups.
The telescreen that watches you is also the phone you chose to buy, paid for, and carry everywhere because you like what it does for you.
Which is something Orwell didn't quite predict, the voluntary nature of modern surveillance.
He imagined surveillance as coercive and external. He didn't imagine that we'd hand companies our location data, our face scans, our emotional reactions, our search history, and call it a convenience.
And then locking in on that data being collected, going deep into every app, and never really thinking about who owns the information.
Quote, and this is the Winston Smith test for 2026. Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. If that is granted, all else follows.
Can you say what you observe? Can you name what you see, even when it contradicts what the dominant narrative is telling you?
That's a genuinely difficult question right now. Not because of government censorship, most of us don't face that, but because of social pressure, algorithmic suppression, the soft cost of being the person who says the inconvenient thing.
The thought crime of 2026 doesn't get you arrested. It gets you ratioed, deplatformed, quietly excluded.
Which is not the same as Room 101. Let's be clear about that.
But it rhymes.
The question Orwell leaves us with is, what is the space you protect? What's the room in your mind with no telescreen?
Your actual private thoughts, before you perform them for an audience. Your beliefs you haven't tested against what's socially acceptable yet.
That interior space, Orwell is saying, is the last jurisdiction where you're free. And the work of protecting it is the beginning of everything else.
Winston kept a diary. He wrote, "Down with Big Brother." He loved Julia in a way that belonged entirely to them. Those were acts, not just thoughts.
And that's what the book ultimately says about doublethink. You can hold 2 contradictory beliefs simultaneously, but beliefs are fragile. They live in the mind. The mind can be tortured, colonized, and shot. What survives is what you externalized, what you did, what you put into the world before the bullet arrived.
The party can rewrite history, control language, colonize your thoughts, but it cannot reach backwards and unmake an act that already happened. Winston's diary was real. It happened. The ink is dry.
So Orwell's real lesson isn't just authoritarian regimes are terrifying. It's the only freedom that holds is the freedom you've already exercised, the thought you've already written down.
Which is why the book itself is an act of resistance. Orwell writing it, us reading it, us talking about it.
Every time someone reads 1984 and thinks, I know this mechanism, I see it operating, that's the freedom to say 2 + 2 make 4, and it's already done, already real, already out of reach.
That's what literature does at its best. It gives you the language to see what you might otherwise accept.
And in 2026, when we've willingly handed so much to platforms and algorithms and surveillance infrastructures we barely understand, we need that language more than ever.
George Orwell, 1984, 1949. Still the most important warning we keep not quite heeding.
Read it, then look at your phone, then read it again.
This is Story Never End, reading yesterday's classics through today's eyes. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.